So wake up, Mr. Freeman. Wake up and smell the ashes.
Hi everyone, it's me BaRKy, and I'm here to talk about some things that have been happening recently with regards to Steam and Half-Life and Valve as a whole, and why it's so hard to separate Steam from Valve and things like that. So I woke up this morning to some of the, well, I wouldn't really call it news, but I woke up this morning to hearing that Marc Laidlaw, the lead writer for almost all of Half-Life in its entirety, having released Half-Life 2 Episode 3 or Half-Life 3, whatever you want to call it, because no one is actually entirely sure. But basically, the next episode of Half-Life's script has been, or not script, but pretty much the plot synopsis has been written out by Marc Laidlaw. He did change a few things here and there. It's probably to avoid an NDA or to avoid bad blood with Valve. Whatever else you want to talk about. I mean, whatever else you want to think it is, it's probably along those lines. He wanted to avoid trouble. Now, it's very clear that this plot synopsis is the next installment of Half-Life, just by the fact that the names that they use are very similar to Half-Life 1's. It speaks about a plot point that they brought up in the last few episodes of Half-Life, stuff like that. And then, of course, taking in that Marc Laidlaw was the writer for most of Half-Life in its entirety. So, taking it from him, it seems like this is legit, and it's probably as close to the next installment of Half-Life that we're gonna get out of Valve, which is a complete and utter shame. And if you're unaware of what I'm talking about, I will put a link in the description. So every day I wake up and I check Reddit. The unhealthiest thing I can do in my life is spend time on Reddit. But I check Reddit just to, get updated with the world and stuff like that. And that was the top post. In fact, it had so many upvotes that I don't think I've seen a post that upvoted before. Except for Carrie Fisher's death last year or this year. But it had close to 60,000 upvotes, which is just absolutely staggering for Reddit. It really means that this post had resonated with a lot of people. And it definitely resonated a lot with me. Now, for a lot of people, they were actually incredibly happy that Marc Laidlaw had released this. In fact, it was a moment of joy, and for me, I have to be honest, it was a moment of joy for a few minutes, because it was such a big deal here in the next installment of Half-Life, and all that, until it started to kick in that the reason he's releasing this is most likely because Valve are not interested in releasing the next installment of Half-Life, and they're not interested in developing it at all. And if you've seen Tyler McVicker's video, Valve News Network, you'll know that almost all of the writers for Half-Life have packed up and left Valve to work on other projects in the gaming community. Now that's a big deal because Valve today is as successful as it's ever been. The company, if you don't know, Valve actually owns Steam, which means that the developers of CSGO, the developers of Dota 2, those are two of the most popular games on the market right now. They just announced a new card game called Artifact, sorry, and that's gonna be a direct contender to Hearthstone, which is one of the biggest games on Twitch as well. So pretty much they have the market cornered when it comes to multiplayer games, especially the online variant, because you don't get much LAN these days. So Valve is massive, and in their whole arc, they are actually more successful now than they've ever been, to the point where and by success I mean money-wise, because they're bringing in so much money now, it's just unbelievable. Gabe Newell's value, his net worth is close to $6 billion, and he owns about 40 to 50% of Steam. So if that doesn't give you, he owns about 40 to 50% of Valve, I mean. So if that doesn't give you some cool numbers to think about, then I don't know. But Valve is a billion-dollar company and it's massive. So now they do have the market cornered, and that is not a shame, because Valve have known to do things decently. They're known to put out things that they're happy with, that are very well done, and they're not ones to brag. They don't brag about games. They don't lie about games to get you hyped up. Now, if you played No Man's Sky, then you probably know exactly what I'm talking about if you followed the release of it or the development. But the dev, Sean Murray, he hyped the game up to the point where, even if a lot of people say he lied, I definitely agree with that, but a lot of people say he didn't lie and stuff like that. Even if he didn't lie, he still hyped the game up to the point where it was pretty much impossible to not be disappointed with that game, just because of how it was released and how it was handled, and because he spoke about things that were absolutely nowhere in the game. Now Valve don't do that. They're a good company when it comes to those kind of things. And up until 2011, 2012, they were the best company when it came to that sort of things. Because when Valve released a game, it was pure excitement. It was just the next game. Everything they touched just turned to gold. And as a young 20-something, I grew up playing the first iteration of many of Valve's games. I wish that I could see how many hours I had in Counter-Strike Source, but I probably had close to 1,000 hours in Counter-Strike Source. Dota 1 as a whole, probably 2,000 to 3,000. I wouldn't even be surprised. I played Dota 1 every day when I was a kid. Every single day. I love that game. I miss old BaRKy, by the way. He didn't get so tilted when he lost games. Counter-Strike Source and the better one before that, 1.6, were just some of my favorite games, just because of how much fun they were. And then Valve released Portal and the Orange Box. So they brought out Team Fortress 2, they brought out Portal, Portal 1 and Portal 2, and a few other things, Left 4 Dead 2 included. And those were also amazing games. All of them were amazing. So I grew up playing Team Fortress Classic, which wasn't even a Half-Life 1 mod at the time I was playing it. It was on the Quake 3 engine that I played Team Fortress on. And it's mind-blowing for me to look back at that time and think about the day that I picked up a Valve game and I knew it was going to be amazing. By the time I was 13 or 14, I had played Half-Life 1 more times than I care to count. And I used to go to this little computer shop, little fat BaRKy used to go to this computer shop every single weekend in South Africa, and I would play Half-Life 1 from beginning to end. I would finish the campaign and I would play the Half-Life 1 multiplayer with friends at this computer shop because the computers could run that and Warcraft 3. The rest of the computers were too shitty to run other things, unfortunately. But that was what we would play a lot, and I mean like a lot. So I would play it every single weekend. Half-Life 1 was an amazing game. And for young me to realize how amazing this game was, I must have been 10 or 11 when I was playing it. For young me to realize that took a lot, because I just had the worst attention span as a kid, and I still kept up with the story. And a lot of people argue that Half-Life's story is very difficult to follow, and I definitely agree. But man, that game was just the fucking best. It was such a good game when it came out. So then Half-Life 1, it really did affect me in every single way, because I played it so much. And right about that time, Half-Life 2 was announced, and it was released very quickly from when it was, well, for when I found out about it, it was released pretty quickly after that. I can't remember exactly when, and I remember going to the computer shop, and they had Half-Life 2 set up on all these computers, because this was before I had my own computer, and I remember going back to it and just playing Half-Life 2, and it shocked me. You're busy watching some of the footage, but the biggest thing was this physics engine. And the physics engine in Half-Life 2 just blew everyone out of the water, and again, it became one of those games that I played every single day for such a long time. So now my story's out of the way. I love Valve, the old Valve, and I'm going to speak about the new one that's come out of the cracks of what's left of the old Valve, pretty much. So there was a time, and there's been a transitioning period now between about 2012 to about now. I would say 2010, but that's not really fair. So I'd say about 2010 to about now. There's a transition period from old Valve, who used to develop new IPs and used to invest money in things that they loved and that the gamers would love. So if you look back at Portal 2 when it was released, or Portal 1, and what a hallmark of a game that is, and how much fun people had. And then if you spend some time playing the developer commentary on, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about how much love went into crafting the story with the protagonists who couldn't speak, and villains that are ever present, but there's no direct face to them. Does that sound familiar? And if you listen to the developer commentary, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because they put a lot of love into this game, and you can feel it when you play in Portal 1 because of how much fun it is. It is such an intricate game, and it's all about just solving puzzles. You would never think that, but with most other games, but this one was. And of course, when Portal 1 came out, people finished it relatively quickly. And then Portal 2 became the next most hyped thing, and it was super hype, and I was in high school when I heard about it, and I bought it on release, and by that time I still had a really shitty gaming computer, but I bought it on release, and I played it at a glorious 24 FPS, maybe, movie cinema style, and I really enjoyed it. Now, Portal, I'd say at the release of Portal 2 till about now is the true transitioning period for Valve. So with Valve, if you know the name Valve, you'll probably be thinking about Dota 2, Counter-Strike Go, a few other ones come to mind. You might be thinking about the new Artifact game. I wouldn't, but you might be thinking about that sort of stuff. But then the biggest thing is probably the meme that came around with Half-Life and Half-Life Confirmed. And with Half-Life 3, for a lot of people, they probably don't even know what Half-Life is. So for a lot of my audience, for example, I can look on YouTube and I can see that the vast majority of people are between the ages of 16 to 21. Now, I'm on the edge of that, pretty much, about to leave the edge of that, actually. But for a lot of people who are 16, that's a 5-year difference. You might have even missed the gap to play Half-Life, because 5 years from now, I can't remember what I was doing 5 years ago, but it wasn't playing too many video games too intensely. But yeah, it's just really, really crazy to think about. So that's the Valve that most people think about. They make massive online multiplayer games, and then another big thing is that they make games that are profitable in a non-broken way. So they sell skins, and for CSGO they sell sprays and gloves and knives and stuff, things that don't actually affect gameplay. Although, to be honest, if someone wants to send me a knife, I promise you I'll get to global pretty quickly. But they monetize the games in interesting ways, and for a time, that was the best way. It was the ideal way. So for me, I switched from Dota 1 to League of Legends, and I was super unhappy about the system that they had at that time, and that was in like 2011, and I was really unhappy with it at that time even. I just had a massive issue. I completely hated it, and it made me not want to play League. I still put in quite a few hundred hours into it, but not enough that I would have without this monetization system. So the way Valve monetized Dota is that they would sell cosmetics for the game. But every single hero was released. So when I got my Dota 2 key in 2012, early 2012, and at the time, by the way, Dota 2 keys at that time cost about $100 each. So I'm lucky my friend just bought me one, so I really appreciate it, Kieran. But I was super happy to realize that every single hero, even though there weren't many at that time, were free on release. And it was awesome. And Valve was still the kings at that time. In 2012, they were still the kings. Because of that, they were making new IPs, but it was slowing down. That's okay. But because they were releasing old favorites and monetizing them properly, in a sense that it was free and fair for all. So you could play the game and play it 100%, and you could still be a pro without ever putting a single cent into it. I loved that, and I'm sure most people did too. Things started to change now, though. So with, I'd say about 2015 to now. Yeah, I finished high school in 2014. So I'd say about 2015 to now, it's just been completely different. They still monetizing it in the same way, but the Valve we loved was enduring. Dota 2 was a main project because they poured so much time into it, and I was so excited for the International in 2012. But the International's come and gone. CSGO majors come and go, and it doesn't leave me with the same effect anymore because I don't have the same love for Valve that I once did. And it really sucks from this young man's outlook on life, and I'm talking about myself here, but I'm sure there are people in the comments, if you've made it this far in the video, who will know exactly what I'm talking about, who wish that Valve would just carry on doing what they're doing, because with the release of the script, it is just the biggest slap in the face to your fan base ever. Because what this means is Half-Life 3 is most likely not in development at all. In fact, they've probably done almost nothing on it because they don't see it as a monetizable way. Like, dude, Valve, I'm gonna get angry, but dude, Valve, you make so much money off everything you do. You're such a rich company. You make billions of dollars. You make $100 million off a tournament event every year. They take 75% of all international funding for themselves. And it still happens that you cannot afford to just hire a team to work on Half-Life 3 in the background. You can't even release the actual script so that we can read it, so we can have closure to your shitty ass fucking game that people have been waiting for so long, including myself. I've been waiting for Half-Life 3 every day for 10 years. 10 years I have been waiting. I've been waiting for the next chapter of the story. And this is what we get. We get Marc Laidlaw, who obviously has a big fucking problem with you releasing the synopsis of the story. Now, he probably didn't want to do that. He probably didn't want to do it this way. He probably wanted to actually develop his own game. But the fact that he did this, and Valve goes ahead and announces Artifact, this crappy fucking, it might be the best game ever, but the idea is crappy because you just see Hearthstone, you just want to compete with Hearthstone. And I'm sick and tired of people telling me to give it a chance. I will give it a fucking chance, I'll play it. it's the slap in the face that they don't care. Like, this is not the old Valve. They have so much money, they could afford to hire several development teams every year just from the excess funding they get from the international. They could hire a team. They make more than Star Citizen raised in 1 year than Star Citizen raised in its entirety. I messed that up completely, but just to put things in perspective, because people speak about Star Citizen having so much funding and all that. Like, where's the money going? They're just building it up. I just want to see new IPs. I don't want to see a Left 4 Dead 3 be the main thing. I want to see Left 4 Dead 3. I want to see Portal 3. I want to see Half-Life 3. Okay, but obviously I want the main thing. I want Half-Life 3 and I want a good one of it. You've had 10 years to work on this game. And at this point you own the entire market. You own Steam. You own so many different things. And people are so dependent on you. Gaming companies are so dependent on you that you could just do this. It's just like... And I probably come across as someone who's entitled. And you know what? Like, whatever, dude. Honestly. I don't actually care about sounding entitled. And to be honest with myself, I'm so disappointed that this company that I used to have so much love for and used to sit in class with my friends and be like, Gaben, Lord Gaben, has turned into this. Like, it's such a shitty reputation to keep. It just blows my mind that it's gotten to this point. Because Valve could have been so, like, it just could have been everything. It could have been the shining example in the world. And maybe Gabe Newell does go to sleep every night and he thinks it is, but it isn't. It's really shitty. And Dota 2 is fantastic, and CSGO I'm sure is great, even though people are really unhappy with it. But why the fuck would they release new skins for Dota 2? When they could be fixing other issues of making new games. It's just bring in a new team. And then someone said to me last year, because they were moving into a new office, dude, you'll see they're going to be releasing new ones because they're moving into a new office so they can hire more people. That never fucking happened, dude. And I doubt it will. Honestly, you can see people who are working at Valve and you can get a rough idea of what they're working on. But just with this artifact thing. And a lot of developers are like, I'm working with this developer and this developer and this developer. And you can track it down. When they announced Artifact, you can take a look. A lot of the devs have put in Artifact in their Twitter bios and stuff like that, and you can go take a look at all of them, and you will be just as disappointed as I am. Sorry for the rant. This video, I don't usually make these kinds of videos, but I'm emotionally charged and it's been a terrible day just because of this Half-Life news. I'll be back with Remold sometime soon.